Hi there, and welcome to the Alberta Update, a look at what's happening in your province. I am your host, Bruce McAllister. Thanks for being with us today. Today, we will chat with Premier Danielle Smith about putting the Sovereignty Act to use, her message to Ottawa, and what she will be telling the world about energy at COP28. Devin Dreeshen, Alberta's Minister of Transportation and Economic Corridors, will join us to chat about what the government is doing to eliminate photo radar fishing holes. Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services Mike Ellis will be here to talk about how his ministry is tackling crime-ridden properties and an increase in gang activity in our cities. Plus, Education Minister Demetrius Nicolaitis announces new funding to help with education pressures in Alberta's K-12 schools. All that and much more on this week's edition of the Alberta Update.
If the federal government has its way, many people will be left without electricity that they can pay for on a power grid that will fall short or even fail in a typical Alberta winter or summer. We refuse to go along with this plan. Well, Albertans must have access to affordable and reliable power when and where they need it. It's a matter of health and safety and a matter of financial reality.
Well, that was Premier Danielle Smith putting the federal government on notice that Alberta will use every tool at its disposal to fight back against federal overreach when it comes to Alberta's electricity grid. Alberta's government has introduced the first resolution under the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act. This will allow the province to take strong, effective action over the coming months and years to counteract the harms and risks to Albertans posed by the federal clean energy regulations. And Premier Danielle Smith joins us to talk more about this today. Good day, Premier.
Hello, Bruce.
I guess the first question of the day is, how did we get to this point?
It's very frustrating because I can tell you that on some projects, we're making great progress with the federal government. We've got a number of tables where we're discussing the use of hydrogen. They've been with us for joint announcements on geothermal, on net zero plastics, which just happened this week. I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit. We are working on a plan for how we might be able to roll out small modular nuclear. And yet, on the issue of trying to align them with our 2050 target for carbon neutrality, you've got Stephen Guilbeault, the Environment Minister, who has just dug in. We've now had two court decisions that have admonished the federal government. They've said this is not cooperative federalism. You cannot use the pretext of it being federal jurisdiction to invade provincial jurisdiction. You've got to work collaboratively. They're just not doing that. I know that when I first started talking about the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act, the media were saying, are you going to respect the court decisions? I always said yes. So I think what is shocking to me is that the federal government is ignoring the courts. And that's what brought us to this point.
Well, your government isn't the only one pushing back against Ottawa. Scott Moe and Saskatchewan have been doing it. Premier, how will the resolution work? Like, how will it protect Albertans from future brownouts and blackouts?
Well, we've put everybody on notice, and I feel like when we have a major departure in government policy caused by the federal government and we need to take future action, that's what the Sovereignty Act is all about. It's putting the legislature on notice that there will be new policy coming forward, there will be new resolutions coming forward, and there may be new legislation coming forward. So we are waiting to see what the federal government does with their final version of the regulations. And we've been asking for a carve-out so that we can continue down the path of getting to carbon neutrality by 2050. If not, there's a couple things we'll have to do. We'll have to become the generator of last resort in Alberta. And that means that rather than just sitting back idly while these private sector companies turn off our baseload power because they're trying to meet some arbitrary target of the feds, we would have to take those over and we would have to run them until the end of their natural life while we're waiting for new projects to come on stream. If there's so much uncertainty that the private sector won't build us new baseload natural gas, and I can tell you Capital Power has gone to an investor conference and they've said the same thing. They said, I'm sorry, with the federal government rules, it's too risky for us to invest in natural gas, then we'll have to do it. We are a natural gas basin, and 90% of our power on most days comes from natural gas. It is still the most cost-effective option for us, and we'll proceed with the best available technology on the issue of emissions abatement. And if that puts us in conflict with the federal government, I'm prepared to say that they can take us to court, and I think we'll win it.
I think Albertans clearly understand that message. Your ministry has, Nathan Newdorf and others have been good about communicating that, but Ottawa isn't listening. Maybe they weren't listening. If the Prime Minister were here or Stephen Guilbeault were here, what would your message to them be?
Listen to the court. The court was very clear that the Constitution matters. We are not a lower level of government, as one journalist asked me this week. We are an equal level of government. They have certain powers, we have certain powers. And in areas where we overlap, we've got to work together. I've been asking to work together right from the moment I got elected leader, when in my very first conversation with the Prime Minister. But I think they're caught in this paradigm where they do look at the provinces as a subordinate level of government. They do think that just because they've passed something in the parliament, that it's legal and they can do whatever they want. And I'm telling you that that's not how the court sees it. So we're going to continue to advance our interests. We're going to continue to assert our areas of jurisdiction. And if all of these issues end up in the courts, it'll be them taking us to court for a change. Because what I've observed about what they do is they pass unlawful legislation, unlawful being that because it violates the Constitution, which is the highest law in the land, then they force us to go to court for years, creating all the economic uncertainty, all of the investment that flees. And then we win and they act like it didn't happen. Well, we're not going to let that happen this time. We're turning the tables on them. We're going to proceed, make sure that we've got investor confidence, make sure we're continuing with these projects. And if they think they can mount a case about why they should violate provincial rights and why they should violate the Constitution, then power to them. They can go to the court and they can make that case. But once again, I think we'll win it.
All right, let's shift gears a bit. You're headed to the UN Climate Change Conference along with Environment Minister Rebecca Schultz. The federal Environment Minister we just spoke of, Stephen Guilbeault, will be there. Is it safe to say that your message will be different than that coming from the federal government?
I hope we're not out of sync, because there's probably nothing worse than when you're trying to go into the international sphere and convince and encourage those who are looking for investment in green technology that the federal and provincial governments are in sync, because there's lots of opportunity. I mean, I mentioned the net zero on the petrochemical plant. There's also a net zero cement project being proposed by Heidelberg. There's carbon capture, utilization, and storage technology and major pipelines that are being proposed by the Pathways Group, and so many other things. And so having a cohesive message that we're aligned on reaching targets together by 2050 and building the kind of framework that will allow it, that's what I would like our message to be. We should be talking about the carbon capture, utilization, and storage tax credit, because they rolled theirs out in the last week. We rolled ours out. We should be talking about the incredible progress that we've made on methane emissions reduction. We've met our target to reduce emissions 45% from 2014 levels 3 years early. There's so much to celebrate. And I would hope that we would be able to have that common message. I fear we won't, because they are still bent on emissions caps on oil and gas that are arbitrary. They're bent on emissions caps on methane that are arbitrary. They're still bent on this net zero power grid by 2035. They've mused about an emissions cap on fertilizer. So they continue to give the indication through their environment minister that they're just going to flout the law, and they're going to try to make these unilateral announcemements. And I'm telling you, if that happens, we're just going to have to fight back.
Well, investment is still coming to the province, so you're doing something right, your government. Dow Chemicals announced a massive investment this week. Talk to us about that, what it means in terms of job creation and all the other good things.
This has taken a lot of years of work. I spoke with the mayor of Fort Saskatchewan, Gail Ketcher, and she said she first signed an NDA about 8 years ago as they were talking about making a major investment there. Keep in mind, so Dow is a company that was founded over 100 years ago by a Canadian, and so they've always had a very strong presence in our country. But they were looking for a place to expand their petrochemical manufacturing. So they do an ethylene cracker and derivatives. And one of the factors that came into play in the last couple of years is, could we do this in a way that would be carbon neutral? And so that's really what they've been working towards. And so we've got a great supply of low cost natural gas. We have the Wolf Midstream pipeline system for CO2 capture that is right there. We have expertise in being able to use hydrogen for a variety of uses. And we have a skilled labor force. And when we also had the provincial, federal, and municipal government all on board in working towards the same end, we were able to get to the finish line in this project in a pretty short period of time. So what we are doing with our Alberta Petrochemical Incentive Program is we've modeled sounded a little bit like how we supported the oil sands operations over the years, where we allow them to pay kind of a lower royalty rate until they earned back their capital costs. That was what we did in the royalty framework. This allows us to rebate back about 12% of the capital cost of the project, so they get back into profitability quickly. They're going to hire 7,000 workers through the construction process. They're going to create 400 to 500 permanent jobs, and then they may proceed to other projects. They've announced phase 1 and 2, but they've got a phase 3. So this is such a good news story. One of the things that Jim Fitterling, the president and CEO, said is that this will decarbonize 20% of their entire production. So if you think about that, he said that if they built 6 of these in the world, you'd be able to decarbonize about 85% of the entire petrochemical stream. And that's the kind of thing that we should be talking about, is transitioning away from emissions, not transitioning away from oil and natural gas.
That is an important distinction. I love that you keep making it. Just before I let you go, Alberta's fiscal update was released today. Are you happy with the trajectory that we are on here financially in Alberta?
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I mean, we are having once again a return to good times after so many years of hard times from 2014 to 2022. It was really difficult for Alberta, and we've turned a corner. And not only is our energy sector doing well, but we're attracting tech investment, attracting agri-food investment. We're diversifying the economy on all fronts, and that's something we should feel really optimistic about. However, the NDP racked up tens of billions of dollars worth of debt, and it is coming due. One of the things our finance minister says is over the next 3 years, 26 billion of that NDP debt will now have to be refinanced at double the rates of interest. And what happens then? It means double the rate of finance charges that we're paying. So rather than having the extra money to put into healthcare and education, it's going to be going to pay finance charges. And so we are really keen on making sure that we continue to have surpluses so we can continue to pay down that debt, so that we don't end up seeing just a dead weight loss of all of those dollars going to finance charges. So I want people to still understand that we have to maintain the fiscal prudence. We have to keep a really tight rein on year over year spending increases. We can't spend mid-year until we've realized our surpluses at the end. We do have a formula that allows for us to put 50% of our surpluses on debt repayment and then have 50% available for debt repayment, more savings, or one-time capital projects. And we're going to stick to that, because we know that we would love to be on a trajectory once again of being debt free. And I think if we can continue to have that discipline, we're going to be able to get there.
Premier, thanks for taking the time as always. And listen, safe travels and enjoy COP28.
You bet. I'll look forward to giving you an update when I return.
You bet. Premier Danielle Smith joining us today. Well, as the Premier and Environment Minister head to COP28 with the other world leaders, many European leaders, they're rethinking their net zero timelines. We want to give you some context on that today. The Canadian Energy Centre releasing a video highlighting how governments across Europe are changing and challenging timelines over concerns with energy security. According to the Canadian Energy Centre, Germany is facing stagnation due to soaring energy costs. They extended their phase out from coal-fired power to 2038. German companies have also opposed the European Union's phase out of combustion vehicles and scrap plans for green building standards. Britain has delayed a ban on new gas and diesel cars to 2035. They have extended the phase out of gas boilers for home heating and have approved hundreds of new oil and gas licenses in the North Sea. France has ruled out a ban on gas boilers for home heating. They have extended the lifespan of their coal-fired plants to 2027 and previously dropped a proposed fuel tax. Italy is calling for exemptions and longer timelines on energy regulations for buildings. They have also challenged the European Commission's plan to phase out combustion-powered vehicles and fought for an amendment for the luxury vehicle industry. And meanwhile, Poland is suing the EU to overturn some net zero policies. They're challenging the ban on combustion cars and emissions targets. Poland also signing an agreement with trade unions to continue mining coal until 2049. All of this in an effort to increase energy security. So there is some context as to what's going on around the world on this file. All this, and as the Premier alluded to, Alberta continues to lead the way on emissions reduction. Alberta was the first to set a methane emissions reduction target for the oil and gas sector. We have now reduced those methane emissions by 45% since 2014, reaching our target 3 years ahead of schedule. Here's a look.
Alberta's natural resources are a blessing. They drive our economy, attract billions in global investment, create good-paying jobs, and fuel progress. Alberta is the safe, secure, and responsible energy supplier the world needs. And as we prepare for the energy solutions of tomorrow, we'll continue to support the energy system of today. Carbon capture is one of the best tools to reduce emissions, and Alberta is and will be a world leader in carbon capture. As part of this effort, Alberta's government will create the Alberta Carbon Capture Incentive Program to build on current success and support capital investments in carbon capture. In doing so, we intend to decarbonize the oil sands and create the world's first carbon-abated major oil field. Alberta is developing carbon storage hubs and incentive programs like the Alberta Carbon Capture Incentive Program to help our industries develop this important technology, reduce emissions, and become a dominant player in the global carbon capture industry. By taking these steps today, we will ensure sustainable prosperity and protect our environment for generations of Albertans to come.
All right, Minister of Transportation and Economic Corridors, Devin Dreeshen, joining us now to talk about traffic in Alberta's two biggest cities and some changes coming to photo radar. Good day, Minister.
Great. Good day to you, and great to be on your show again.
Minister, let's talk about the latest on the Edmonton Ring Road. First of all, a huge undertaking to widen one of the I guess busiest sections of the Anthony Henday is now complete. What will this mean for drivers in Edmonton?
Well, it's a huge benefit to drivers in southwest Edmonton. There was a $100 million project to take the Anthony Henday from 4 lanes to 6 lanes. So about 15 minutes in one direction, drivers in that part of the city will see a benefit. So when you look at a round trip on a daily commute, that's a half an hour back in people's lives every day going to work. So a huge benefit to people in that area. And two, when you look at the fact that this was made for about 40,000 vehicles back in 2006 when this opened. They exceeded that capacity within 3 years. So this is an area of Edmonton that is growing at an extremely fast rate. So to see 40,000 more vehicles and more people on that road in such a short period of time was very unprecedented. So that's why we've 6-laned that section of the highway. So now it can fit up to about 120,000 cars per day. So there's 40,000 more vehicles per day of growth in that area. But as the province is growing by about 100,000 people a year, this is just another example of these growth pressures of, yes, it's great. Alberta is calling and we're bringing in more people, but it stresses, schools, hospitals, roads. So we have to make sure our infrastructure can catch up to this, the good success story of people wanting to move to Alberta.
That's it. It's such a blessing and it's a challenge at the same time, as you point out. Let's talk about the Calgary Ring Road. People would love to hear an update on that. What's happening with Stoney, and when can we expect everything completed here?
So I promise to come back on your show very soon to share some very good news on that. The Calgary Ring Road, when it's complete, will be 101 kilometers in a circle around the city of Calgary. And good news, it is on budget, and it's looking like it may open ahead of schedule. So I don't want to get over my skis on that announcement, but it's really, really exciting to see the development. And just recently, last month, we announced the West Bow River Bridge and overpasses on the Trans-Canada and Bow Trail. So, a lot of good progress is being made on the Calgary Ring Road. And just like in Edmonton, seeing huge population growth, and to have a ring road that's owned by the province, but really benefits city traffic as well, because it diverts cars off of roads within the city to be able to circumnavigate the city and go around. So yeah, so really, really good progress is being made on the Ring Road in Calgary.
All right. Well, we will look forward to having you back on for an update soon. We will hold you to that. Hey, listen, some big news for drivers that are using those ring roads this week. You're making some changes to photo radar rules to eliminate these so-called fishing holes. Tell us more about that.
Sure. Well, it goes back a long way, actually. The NDP government back in 2018, they issued a report on the 2,400 photo radar sites that we have here in the province of Alberta. And just a bit of context, you compare that to Quebec or BC, that are the second and third biggest users of photo radar. They have about 190 and 160 photo radar sites. So in Alberta, there's been a big use of photo radar, an expansion of photo radar. But this report looked at all the photo radar sites here in the province and found over an 8-year period that you could probably only point to about 1.4% reduction in accidents. So when you look at the hundreds of millions of dollars of tickets and revenue, and possibly not even a benefit when it comes to accidents, there's been a lot of public debate on the effectiveness of photo radar. So we're going to be going through. We're taking the photo radar sites off of the ring roads because there's some really good examples of fishing holes where it's revenue generation of a vehicle on an overpass with a free flow of traffic underneath, and has nothing really to do with traffic safety, but revenue generation. So we've eliminated the fishing holes on the ring road, and of the 26 municipalities that are using photo radar, over the next year, we're going to be making sure that they're used for traffic safety and not for revenue generation. So that is ongoing work to make sure that we can remove all fishing holes in Alberta.
Well, it seems to make great sense. I know drivers will be happy to hear it. Minister of Transportation and Economic Corridors, Devin Dreeshen, thanks for taking some time.
Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate it.
There's the minister. In some other news today, nurse practitioners, highly trained and valued medical professionals. We do know this. To better utilize their expertise and ensure that more Albertans have access to a primary care provider, Alberta's government is allowing nurse practitioners to open their own clinics. The Premier and Health Minister Adriana LaGrange joined the Nurse Practitioners Association of Alberta to make that announcement.
Nurse practitioners are ready to lead, and government will give them the resources so that they can lead.
Thank you, Premier Smith and Minister LaGrange, for recognizing and supporting the role of nurse practitioners in improving access to high-quality primary care for Albertans. Until now, accessing a nurse practitioner has been challenging. This announcement ends those challenges. It's the goal of the association that over the next 3 years, more than 300 NPs will successfully launch their primary care practice. There is a large nurse practitioner workforce in Alberta ready and willing to step up.
We committed to several immediate actions that will make primary healthcare the foundation of the healthcare system. This is precisely why we are implementing a nurse practitioner compensation model and closing this funding gap so that we can add much needed capacity to our primary healthcare system and help more Albertans find a regular care provider.
And to achieve this goal, we have to ensure that primary health care is the foundation of the entire healthcare system. We know that there's a lot of work to do, but we're at a critical time for healthcare in Alberta. Many people are struggling to find a family doctor, and those who have them may end up waiting weeks for an appointment. Albertans expect better, and so does our government. This would represent a significant positive outcome for tens of thousands of patients. Actually, we were just talking about it, hundreds of thousands of patients. It's unfortunate that nurse practitioners have been underutilized in Alberta because they can provide an incredible service to Albertans. And that's why we're also providing a grant to the Nurse Practitioner Association of Alberta for $2 million over 3 years. This investment will help to recruit and prepare nurse practitioners as they take on more responsibilities. And I do want to be clear, Alberta's government is pulling out all the stops to stabilize and strengthen and improve Alberta's primary healthcare system so every single person can have access to a family practitioner and get the healthcare they need when and where they need it.
Well, another big topic in the news these days is public safety. It's a huge issue in our communities right now. We are seeing increases in violence and gang violence, unfortunately, and issues with crime, certainly in our major cities. Alberta's government is committed to addressing these issues. Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services, Mike Ellis, joining us now to talk more about what the Alberta government is doing. Good day, Minister.
Good day, Bruce.
Minister, one of the ways that you're working to deal with this crime we're seeing is putting more boots on the ground. We've heard you speak of that several times, and beefing up the safe communities and neighborhood units in Calgary, Edmonton, and Southern Alberta. Tell us more about what the SCAN team does.
Yeah, I mean, these SCAN teams, they have the ability to investigate and address criminal activity on properties. A lot of folks don't know this, but I mean, there are problem properties all throughout Alberta. This is a great concern to many communities, and it takes hundreds and hundreds of hours of officers' time to, from a criminal aspect, from a civil aspect, to really kind of eliminate these properties, problem properties from communities, and that's what we're doing. So we've expanded that in Lethbridge and Calgary and Edmonton. Again, it's those boots on the ground that are going to be able to assist the local law enforcement in taking these problem properties and really taking back communities.
Any way to assess or quantify how successful this approach has been, Minister?
Yeah, I think the number I heard is that sort of over SCAN's existence, there's been about 8,000 properties that have been investigated and really kind of we'll say brought back into the fold where they are now operating properly. But really, the organized crime, people need to understand these properties consist of a lot of organized crime. Organized crime consists of drugs and guns and human trafficking and stolen property and they become a real problem. So when you get rid of one of these properties in a community, there's a cascading effect that really eliminates or reduces, I should say, crime within the adjacent communities.
Minister, gang violence and gun violence are increasing. I know you know this in Calgary and Edmonton and other parts of the province for that matter. The troubling part about all of this is innocent bystanders are getting caught in the crossfire of it. What is your government doing to address it?
Yeah. Well, that's stating the obvious there, Bruce. The organized crime is becoming more and more brazen. You always have to ask yourself, why? Why are they becoming more brazen? Well, it has to do with the lack of consequences. And this is clearly on, as I have said time and time again, on the NDP Liberal government that is in Ottawa right now. They have made it so that there are virtually no consequences when people commit these crimes. And I would say that they have created an environment that has allowed organized crime to thrive. And so when you are making $20,000 investments in the drug trade that's netting you $5 million, there are a lot of turf wars that are going on right now. There's a lot of organized crime that are trying to establish themselves right here in Alberta. And so we have to take a zero tolerance approach to this. And so you're going to be seeing some announcements coming here in the future, but we've invested just for what we've done so far. As an example, we've invested in budget 2023, we've invested $4.4 million into Alberta law enforcement response teams to work with local municipalities such as Calgary and Edmonton. We've invested in $2.4 million in the firearms investigative unit. We've created a gang suppression unit, $2 million for that, and we have a fugitive apprehension team. So we're doing what we can, but I can tell you, and I've said this time and time again, we are less safe in this country and certainly less safe in Alberta because of this Liberal NDP alliance in Ottawa right now.
Because it's, Minister, I just want to follow up on it real quick before I let you go, because it seems like these perpetrators of crime are arrested and then released, as you say, and they're right back in our neighborhoods and communities. Is there any way to get the federal government to see the harm this is causing to citizens? I mean, how do you advocate for change there?
So we've been leading the country on this particular issue. All of us provinces have been united in that Bill C-75 seems to be the real crux of the problem. It has made it virtually impossible for police, for Crown prosecutors to keep people in what is known as pretrial custody. So you've heard the phrase, this is violent repeat criminal offenders are being released into the communities. It really boils down to C-75. That being said, C-48, only a day or so ago, has finally gone through the Senate. But I have said this time and time again, we will see. We will see if C-48 actually becomes effective. But I will state this again, as I have stated this before. If C-48 does not have the impact that I hope it to have in order to keep violent repeat criminal offenders in custody, then we will be demanding that C-75 be repealed.
Our Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services and our Deputy Premier, Mike Ellis. Appreciate the time, Minister.
Thanks, Bruce.
Alberta's government is investing $16 million to upgrade 400 affordable housing units so more Albertans have access to safe houses. These are affordable housing projects that require renovation and preventative maintenance. This funding means that 100 affordable homes will reopen. Another 300 will continue to be available for use while undergoing preventative maintenance.
Projects that we are investing that $16 million in include repairing roofs, which I believe is taking place for the facility that I'm in today, replacing windows, upgrading elevators in seniors apartments, replacing furnaces, boilers, and ventilation systems, and making sure that existing structures will be there available for people to use them. Since 2019, our government, the Alberta government, has invested nearly $780 million to build more than 4,600 units of affordable houses across the province. Together with our partners, we're also supporting $9 billion in investment between now and 2031 to create another 25,000 additional units of affordable housing in Alberta.
Jason Nixon, Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Services, also highlighting Alberta's Stronger Foundations strategy. It will ultimately help support 82,000 low-income Albertan households by 2031. That is a 40% increase in affordable housing. Alberta has become a major destination for Canadians looking to live, work, and play. They bring their families to this province. It holds great opportunities, of course. While this is great news, it also presents a few challenges for us. And that is why Education Minister Demetrios Nicolaitis announced $30 million in new funding to help support our kids. And Minister Nicolaitis joining us today to talk more about this announcement. Minister, thank you. Always appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about the increase in enrollment. I think the Premier alluded to it in one of our conversations earlier in schools in Alberta. Put it into context, Minister. What kind of growth are we seeing here?
Yeah, the growth that we're seeing is quite unprecedented. Just broadly, the level of population increase that we're seeing in the province is quite remarkable. We're on track to see some of the largest increase in population since 1914. So the province is really back and booming. People are flocking to Alberta once again. And as you said, this creates some pressures, of course, in many facets of our society, including on our education system. As an example, I know that the Calgary Board of Education has welcomed well over 7,000 additional students just in this 1 year alone, starting in September. And of course, that's replicated across the province with other major school divisions reporting similar numbers. So we are seeing some significant enrollment pressures, which I think is a sign of Alberta's success generally. Once again, Alberta is an attractive place. But as you said, that does bring some challenges as well.
Well, there is context for sure. Those numbers are staggering. How will the 30 million address these growth pressures?
So the 30 million is an in-year top-up. So, of course, not something that Treasury Board really likes to do often. Of course, they like for spending to be allocated within the budget every year in the spring. But we've seen very clear the pressure that our school divisions are under, and that's why we made that in-year bump of $30 million. This $30 million is going to what's called the Supplemental Enrollment Growth Grant. So this grant provides additional funding to school divisions who are seeing enrollment above and beyond what they had forecasted. So that grant was created in Budget 23 and will be in place for the next 3 years. But we've seen the need to top that up further. The vast majority of those funds are going to our 4 metro school divisions: Edmonton Public and Catholic, Calgary Public and Catholic. They're the ones who are seeing some of the biggest pressures. So it'll go to help ensure that they're receiving adequate funding for those additional students.
Great news for sure. Listen, let's switch gears a bit. You've got such a big file, the education system in Alberta. But let's talk about what you're doing to ensure kids are prepared for the future. I know there is a dual credit program underway. You've announced some funding for that in high schools. Maybe explain to those watching how this program works and how it helps prepare our kids for success.
Yeah, absolutely. And making sure that we prepare our kids for success is the top priority. And of course, that involves career success. So one of the things that we've done just very recently, we've announced an investment of $3.6 million into dual credit programs across the province for the 23-24 school year. Of course, the dual credit programs exist primarily in high school, grades 10 to 12, and students can earn both high school credits and post-secondary credits, and of course expedite their post-secondary journey. So this funding is going to school boards to help them establish these dual credit courses, enhance and expand existing ones. Those can be in things like carpentry, welding, artificial intelligence, medical and health technologies, agriculture. There's a variety of different dual credit options that exist, and we want to further enhance that to help students who know in high school what they want to do to be able to start earning credit towards their post-secondary credentials while they're in high school.
What a great idea. We've such a shortage of skilled workers in so many different fields. You well know this, Minister. Listen, always appreciate talking to you. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
There is Minister of Education Dimitros Nikolaitis on the program. Well, Alberta's government is providing additional funding to support the mental health and well-being of Alberta's farming and ranching families. As Agriculture Minister R.J. Segerson explains, these families often face unique challenges, and having support from professionals who understand the ag industry is critical to getting the right care.
I'm R.J. Segerson, Alberta's Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation. Today, I'm pleased to announce that our government is boosting support for AgNo, the Alberta Farm Mental Health Network, with almost $400,000 in SCAP funding. Farmers and ranchers face challenges like unpredictable weather, animal disease outbreak, long working hours, and social isolation, which can negatively affect their mental health and well-being. AgNo is working to raise awareness and help farmers and ranchers access the support they need by developing mental health programs, community events, and learning resources.
I'm farming, break a leg. Mom, take me to town, see the doc. I'm under stress. I'll just roll my sleeves up, work harder, it'll go away. When the province approached us to say, could we help with this situation, we said absolutely yes. We retained the help of the University of Alberta, so we're research-based. We've reached out to the medical community and talking with them regarding how to work with farmers, understanding farmers, those types of things. We're working closely with the farmers themselves on wanting to access services and gaining access to services. We do this through a whole series of webinars and meetings, etc. Have a therapist network that we refer farmers to, those kinds of things. The demand is building and building and building as awareness happens. Things just keep moving. So we're very thankful. We're looking forward to the challenge of the coming years, and this will make a difference.
Their network of therapists and counselors are already making great strides. This fall, AgNo has already provided mental health support to 39 farm families, and these funds will help them reach even more people. Thank you to our farmers and ranchers for putting food on tables around the world. I know that it's been a tough year, and I encourage you to visit agno.ca to learn more about what supports are available. Alberta's government has your back.
And that does it for the Alberta Update this week. A look at what's happening in your province with your government and the issues that impact you. We will have one more show next week before we take a break until late January over the Christmas break. You can always view the Alberta Update on the Your Alberta YouTube page or the Premiers at AB Danielle Smith. Make sure to subscribe by searching Your Alberta or AB Danielle Smith on YouTube, then hit the subscribe button. It is just that easy. Thank you for sharing some time with us today. We appreciate you joining us, and we will see you again next time.